Sujin lay on the bed early in the morning, absent-mindedly rubbing the edge of her yoga mat with her fingers while sinking into her thoughts. The weight of her age pressed on her mind as she reflected that she was already 40 years old. At this age, was she missing the presence of a man by her side? Her eyes slowly drifted toward the family photograph placed on the small table beside her bed. Staring at the image of herself with her late husband and their little daughter, a wave of bitterness crept into her. In her heart, she silently accused her husband, thinking that everything had been his fault. The silence of the room broke when the door creaked open. Her daughter, Eunjung, asked her with a gentle voice, asking if her mother was still sleeping. Sujin, lost in her own reflections, thought that perhaps it was already too late in life to dream of new love. Pushing the thought aside, she responded softly that she was already awake and would be out soon. After freshening up, Sujin moved into the kitchen and began preparing breakfast. Eunjung, sitting at the table, insisted that she did not need to eat because she was already running late for school. Sujin, however, firmly reminded her that even a little breakfast was important. Skipping meals, she explained, was not only unhealthy, but also harmful for the skin. Eating properly, she said, would help her daughter grow more beautiful. Eunjung's eyes lit up as she teased that she wanted to become pretty, just like her mother. Sujin laughed, amused by the innocence of her child, and agreed with her. Yet Yoonjung's mood shifted as she mentioned that something other than breakfast was ruining her skin. With curiosity, Sujin asked what it was, only to hear her daughter complain about the boy next door, Oppa Junhyun. Yoonjung explained that he had started being noisy again, talking like a maniac all night long. Sujin asked gently if she meant the student Junhyun, confessing that she herself had not heard anything unusual. As she placed the food in front of her daughter, Yoonjung continued, insisting that his loud voice carried into her room so clearly that she wondered what was so thrilling about his endless conversations. Sujin reminded her daughter not to speak in such harsh words, but Eunjung retorted in frustration, accusing her mother of taking his side of hers. Calmly, Sujin assured her that this was not the case. Still, her daughter urged her to say something to him so her skin could be spared the stress of sleepless nights. Sujin, amused by her daughter's earnestness, laughed and promised that if the noise continued, Eunjung should tell her again. Once breakfast was finished, Eunjung thanked her mother and prepared to leave for school. Before she could step out, Sujin stopped her and asked whether she needed more pocket money. She reminded her daughter that it had been a while since she had given her any. Eunjung reassured her mother that she was fine, explaining she had been saving. Sujin shook her head, clarifying that it was not about saving, but about her comfort. Eunjung smiled and suggested that if her mother was so worried about her, she could simply work part-time. Sujin immediately dismissed the idea, saying that students should focus only on their studies. Eunjung winked playfully, promising that if she needed money, she would ask, calling her mother Mrs. Kim to tease her before leaving with a cheerful goodbye. Sujin stood quietly at the door, watching her daughter leave. A deep sigh escaped her as she thought of how good and kind her daughter was. Her heart, however, ached with regret. Memories flooded back of how her husband had died 10 years ago, leaving her to raise their daughter alone. She admitted to herself that not once had she managed to do things perfectly for Yoonjung, and even now she could not provide her with her own room. With those heavy thoughts pressing on her, she prepared herself and left for work. At her workplace, Sujin began her duties as a cleaning lady. She mopped the floors diligently, and as she was about to clean the urinals, she heard a voice behind her. Someone thanked her for her hard work. Turning, she saw President Jung standing there. He praised her, saying that ever since she had started working, the building had remained spotless. Sujin smiled politely, insisting that the place had always been clean. He shook his head, assuring her he was serious, and remarked that the woman who had worked before her spent her time joking around instead of working. While speaking, he began relieving himself at the urinal. Sujin glanced in his direction, embarrassed but telling herself it was unavoidable in such a setting. Their conversation continued. He commented on her situation, suggesting it seemed difficult. Sujin admitted that her daughter was in college and that translation work, which she had once relied on, was no longer steady. He looked at her closely and remarked that it seemed she needed a great deal of money. Sujin responded with quiet resignation, saying that many people were in the same position. Then, lowering his voice, he offered to introduce her to another job. At first, Sujin was surprised and even hopeful. She asked eagerly if he was serious, and he replied that he was telling this only to her. She pressed him to explain further, and he hinted that it might involve something unusual, but insisted it would pay twice or even 3 times more than what she currently earned. He started touching her milk jugs. As his actions grew bolder, Sujin's heart turned cold. She realized his true intentions. He reassured her that they would not harm her, that she should think about her daughter, but by then Sujin's anger had boiled over. With fury, she struck him across the face and spat curses, demanding if he wanted to die. That night, Sujin sat at her kitchen table, her head lowered onto her arms. Shame and anger burned inside her as she thought that she had created a mess. She regretted feeling pity toward him and blamed herself for not asking for more wages directly. She recalled his words, his offer to give her more money later if she stayed quiet and not to tell anything to police, and her stomach churned with disgust. Her brooding was interrupted by the familiar loud voice of a boy streaming online in the neighboring house. She heard him speaking excitedly, bragging about succeeding in a bet of 10,000 won after his broadcast. He rambled on, engaging with his viewers, promising to share more results in the next stream. Sujin listened closely, recognizing the voice as student Junhyun. Determined that she should say something before her daughter returned home, she rose from her seat. Inside his room, Junhyun finished his session, telling his audience that he would end the stream early that night and see them again tomorrow. As he took off his headset and muttered to himself, wondering what he should do next, a sudden knock echoed at his door. He opened the door and found Sujin standing there. She spoke directly, asking Junhyun if she could talk to him for a moment, but instead of responding calmly, he shut the door abruptly and raised his voice, telling her to wait for a while and that he would come out soon. Sujin stood outside, her expression showing clear annoyance, and her thoughts wandered as she reflected that, particularly on this day, he seemed unusually full of energy, almost overflowing with it. After a short pause, he opened the door again and greeted her with a polite hello, Auntie. As she looked at him, she noticed the distinct scent of youth around him, a reminder that he was still a young man. Her thoughts shifted uneasily, and she wondered it was because of the earlier incident that her mind was entertaining such strange notions. She quickly reminded herself that such thoughts were not right, that it would be more respectful to dismiss them. She then considered what her answer would have been if she had actually responded to the suggestion he had made earlier. Junhyun, meanwhile, admitted that he had been planning to find her anyway. Sujin, however, questioned silently whether she would really be able to refuse his offer regarding the yoga session. At that moment, he reached out gently and took hold of her hands. She immediately asked what he was doing, surprised by the gesture. He replied that he had a favor to ask from her. She asked him what that favor might be, but instead of giving details, he urged her to step inside first, saying it would be better to talk inside. With that, both of them walked together into his house. Elsewhere, Eunjung returned home and announced her arrival by calling out to her mother. She then realized that the house was empty and wondered whether her mother had gone out at such a late hour. Just as she was thinking this, her mother came back in. Eunjung asked her where she had been. Her mother looked extremely tired, managed to utter only a few words saying that it was nothing, and without finishing her sentence, she quietly retreated into her room. Sujin lay on her bed, her body heavy with fatigue, but her mind restless, turning over 1,000 thoughts at once. She kept asking herself how she had been able to accept his favor so readily, a question that now seemed almost impossible to answer, that what was she getting herself into? As she tried to breathe steadily, trying to calm the racing thoughts, her daughter quietly peeking the door. Eunjung's soft gaze fell on her mother, and she noticed her unusual breathing pattern, almost like she was practicing Lamaze exercises. The sight made her pause, puzzled and worried. Sujin, lost in her own thoughts, barely noticed the presence of her daughter, still focused on the storm of emotions brewing within her. She kept thinking that when tomorrow arrived, she had no clear idea of what she would do or how she would navigate the unexpected situation. Sujin's mind, however, drifted back to a half hour earlier to the moment she had entered Junhyun's home. The memory was vivid. She had walked in cautiously, noticing every detail of his apartment. Her eyes had wandered across the room, taking in the computer setup and other personal belongings. The space seemed lively, even warm, a reflection of the man who lived there. As she observed, Junhyun appeared, holding a glass of juice. He had smiled politely and told her that he had brought something for her. Sujin had responded with a soft thank you and started drinking the juice, commenting casually on the heat of the day outside. Her attention had then been drawn to milk jugs. Curiosity overcame her, and she asked him what favor he wanted from her. Junhyun had hesitated, pausing for a moment before speaking. Sujin noticed the hesitation and gently encouraged him to speak freely, assuring him that whatever the favor was, she would listen. Watching him closely, she realized how strikingly good-looking he was, which made her feel slightly self-conscious but also intrigued. His eyes searched hers, seeking understanding, and finally, he spoke. He admitted that it was a difficult favor to ask, but he mustered the courage to continue. Sujin urged him to speak plainly, insisting that she wanted to know what it was. He finally confessed, almost in a whisper, that he wanted her to date him, just for tomorrow. The words struck her so suddenly that the juice she was drinking nearly spilled from her mouth. She choked slightly, her body reacting involuntarily to the shock. Panicked, Junyun asked if she was okay, thinking perhaps the juice had gone bad. Sujin coughed and gasped for air, quickly requesting water. He immediately offered to fetch it for her, but she insisted she could get it herself. As she stepped forward, however, she slipped on the spilled juice and fell to the floor. Junhyun's face turned pale with panic. He bent down quickly, asking if she had hurt herself. Sujin waved him off, insisting she was fine, though her heart raced from the fall and the earlier shock. He then spoke honestly, revealing that he was actually single and that everyone he knew teased him for it. To escape their jokes, he had fabricated the story of dating someone, and the only person he could think to ask for help was her. Sujin, taken aback, asked if he had really told them it was her. He admitted he had, confessing that he had no other choice. The revelation made her question why he had chosen her, reminding him of the considerable age difference between them. Junhyun's explanation was simple. She was the only woman he knew, and he would be satisfied if she merely acted as his girlfriend for one day. Sujin stared at him, conflicted. She thought, could this request mean so much to him? She hesitated, weighing her moral compass against the evident importance of this favor. Just then, she heard a faint, unusual sound and noticed an artificial purple protein bar lying on the counter. Surprise and curiosity bubbled up inside her. She questioned him about it, expecting some rational explanation. Junyun quickly clarified that it was a misunderstanding, insisting he had no personal use for it and intended to use it only during his streaming sessions. When Sujin attempted to leave, she accused him of exploiting the arrangement to involve her in activities typically reserved for real couples. Junhyun, clearly taken aback, quickly denied any such intentions. She raised her voice, comparing him to the eccentric men found in adult-themed webtoons, her frustration and fear mingling in the intensity of her words. He pleaded with her to calm down, worried that someone might overhear their argument. Tears filled Sujin's eyes as she reminded him that she was a wife and a mother, with a daughter nearly his age. She struggled with her own emotions, realizing how precarious and strange the situation had become. Junhyun responded gently, acknowledging her circumstances, and reiterated that all he wanted was a single day. Yet in his heart, he admitted that he wished he could make her happy forever. Sujin's eyes widened in disbelief when he mentioned the word forever. He explained that he truly liked her and she could not hide her surprise. When she asked why, he revealed his loneliness, having grown up with only his mother in his life. His lack of exposure to women left him unprepared for kindness and beauty, and when someone like her smiled at him, he could not help but fall in love. He added that even if she agreed for just a day, it had to be with her and no one else. Sujin remained still, her mind spinning from the intensity of his words. She realized that her decision would carry weight, but at the same time, she felt strangely compelled. After a moment of reflection, she agreed, her voice soft but resolute, saying that she would accept being his girlfriend for just the next day. Junyun's expression changed from anxious hope to overwhelming gratitude. He instructed her to come to his house the following day and explained that it was better to tell her in advance. Sujin, gathering her courage, asked one last question about the fake purple protein bar. He promised to explain everything the following day, smiling faintly at the absurdity and strangeness of the situation. Time passed quickly, as it always does when one is consumed with anticipation. Morning arrived, and Sujin found herself standing outside her own door, the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She reminded herself of her roles, mother, wife, neighbor, auntie, but the promise she had made to Junhyun lingered in her mind. The notion of spending a day as a young man's girlfriend both intrigued and frightened her, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. Junhyun asked Sujin if she was ready now. She was wearing a face mask, her voice trembling slightly as she replied that yes, she was ready. Even as she spoke, her heart was racing, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. Junhyun looked at her carefully, studying her expression, and asked if she remembered all the things they had discussed before. She nodded, trying to steady herself, assuring him that she remembered every detail, though inwardly she felt a nervous tension tightening her chest. With that, Junhyun started his computer and launched the streaming platform. Slowly, the interface flickered to life, and viewers began joining, their avatars and messages appearing in real time. Junhyun initiated a countdown, and as it reached 0, he greeted the audience with a warm, "Hello, everyone." Sujin felt a shiver of nervousness run through her. Sitting beside him, she thought to herself that there was no turning back now. Both of them faced the screen, the glow of the computer illuminating their faces and casting soft shadows across the room. Junyun asked her to introduce herself. Her throat felt dry, and for a moment she could not find her voice. He repeated the request patiently, encouraging her gently, and after a moment's pause, she asked if she truly had to do it. Taking a deep breath, she whispered that her boyfriend is Junhyun Si, announcing herself as his girlfriend. Junhyun confirmed it to the audience, telling them that he indeed had a girlfriend. Internally, Junhyun worried that her nervousness could cause problems on the stream. Perhaps it was her first time appearing online that made her so tense. He tried to reassure her subtly, telling her to stay comfortable, and asked her again to introduce herself. Taking a deep breath, Sujin managed to speak more fully. "Hello, everyone." She said she is Junhyun's girlfriend, and her name is An Gayong. Nice to meet them all. She asked her please take good care of her. She had faked her name, but she said it clearly, giving the impression of confidence, even though inside she felt her heart hammering. Comments began pouring in almost immediately. Sujin watched them scroll across the screen, thinking that the audience truly believed their scenario was real. Suddenly, a notification appeared. OO had sponsored 10,000 won. She blinked in astonishment, thinking that something so simple could have such a large impact. Almost immediately, another person sponsored 5,000 won. Sujin felt a mixture of surprise, anxiety, and disbelief. She began to wonder if this was all part of a scam. Her thoughts became slightly fearful as the stream continued, the donations coming in faster than she expected. A viewer questioned whether Junhyun had used employees to stage the stream, which made both of them feel uneasy. Junhyun quickly responded, denying any wrongdoing, insisting that everything was genuine. Sujin looked at him and noticed his composure, despite the growing pressure. She decided to speak herself, telling the viewers that she was telling the truth, doing her best to provide proof. Still, some viewers continued to scrutinize them. One comment pointed out that their age difference was too large to realistically call her his girlfriend. Sujin felt a flush of embarrassment and annoyance, while Junhyun, though slightly embarrassed, addressed the comment directly. He explained that yes, there might be an age difference, but genuine feelings cannot be bound by numbers. Hearing his courage and sincerity, Sujin felt a mix of surprise and admiration, thinking to herself how remarkable it was that he could face the audience so confidently. Then, one viewer provocatively suggested that they kiss to prove their relationship. Junhyun was stunned, nearly shouting, insisting that it was far too soon. Sujin, however, calmly replied that they could try it. He was shocked by her unexpected confidence, but she reassured him that she was okay with kissing. Internally, she reasoned that she needed to support him, ensuring the stream did not falter because of her hesitation. Junhyun debated in his mind, thinking perhaps it would be better to resist, but seeing her resolve, he realized there was no other option. She urged him to hurry, and they leaned in, sharing a kiss. Junhyun thought to himself that there was no way he could resist. Once the kiss ended, Junhyun ended the stream. Sujin, slightly trembling, asked about the stream, worried that anyone watching might misinterpret their actions. She thought that anyone who saw it might consider it a crime or a mistake impossible to recover from. Turning to him, she asked if he had truly meant it when he said he liked her. Junhyun confirmed, with sincerity in his voice, that he had, emphasizing that age did not matter and that his feelings were genuine. Sujin reflected on her own life, realizing that as a mother and a woman not used to dating, she had never seriously considered romance in this way. Junhyun, understanding her hesitation, apologized for his impulsiveness, promising to take responsibility for his actions and asking her to accept his apology. Despite the awkwardness and tension, Sujin realized she had felt genuinely happy. For a moment, she was reminded of the warmth and joy of being loved as a woman. Junhyun, shy and relieved, expressed that he was glad she had experienced that happiness. Sujin smiled faintly, thinking that even if dating him was impossible beyond this day, the promise of one day together was still meaningful. She felt a mixture of disbelief and excitement, thinking she might have gone a little crazy. Junhyun, surprised by her words, asked if they could continue from where they had left off. She affirmed that they could, agreeing to stay together until the time was up, embracing the fleeting but significant connection they had shared. As Yoonjung stepped into her house, she opened the door and announced that she was home, wondering aloud where her mother had gone. To her surprise, she noticed a letter resting on the table. The note explained that her mother had gone out to spend time with a friend and might return late, adding that she had left some cash for dinner and expressing her love for Yoonjung. Alongside the letter, Yoonjung found the money her mother had mentioned. Delighted by the gesture, she remarked to herself that it was very thoughtful and began considering whether she should order pizza or fried chicken for dinner. Suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by a strange noise coming from the neighborhood, prompting her to wonder if the neighbors were arguing again. Meanwhile, in the neighborhood, King and Sujin were preparing to begin their morning exercise routine. Sujin felt uncertain about the activity but ultimately agreed to participate. Back at her house, as Eunjung enjoyed her dinner, she became aware of a female voice now mingling with the sounds from the neighborhood. She found herself growing curious about the source of the commotion. After the wrestling session, he had asked her if she could reconsider going out with him, assuring her in a gentle, slightly nervous tone that he would be really good to her and that he would do everything he could to make her happy. Sujin felt a wave of awkwardness but maintained her composure, explaining that it wasn't that she didn't like him. She clarified that she thought it was far too early for anything serious and suggested that they think of yesterday merely as a one-time occurrence, nothing more. He accepted her response, though his eyes betrayed a twinge of disappointment, the kind that silently weighed on the heart. Sujin, sensing his disheartened mood, decided to soften the moment by promising that she would help him with his channel again, hoping this small gesture might lift his spirits. The happiness on his face when he heard this was unmistakable, and she couldn't help but notice how relieved he seemed. After a moment, he mentioned that he should probably be going, but before leaving, he reached out and handed her an envelope, insisting it was a token of appreciation for her time and effort on his channel. He insisted gently, saying that he had planned to give it to her from the beginning and that it was his way of thanking her for the favor she had done. Hesitant but feeling that it would be impolite to refuse, she accepted the envelope. When she finally opened it, she was surprised to see it was full of money. A mix of shock and gratitude washed over her, and she thanked him sincerely, calling him Sir in a tone that was both formal and appreciative, as if trying to mask her own embarrassment at the gesture. Meanwhile, across town, Eunjung was sitting at the breakfast table, looking visibly exhausted. She rubbed her eyes and asked her mother, who was busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen, when she had returned home. Sujin, slightly confused and still carrying the fog of last night's exhaustion, mentioned that she had drunk a little too much and had only returned that morning. Eunjung, her tone heavy with fatigue, remarked that her mother might not have heard her correctly, hinting that she had something important to share. Curious, Sujin asked what she meant. Eunjung explained that the guy next door had apparently brought a girl over, and they had been so active during a workout session that she had been unable to sleep all night. Sujin felt a rising heat of embarrassment, her mind racing with the realization that her daughter had overheard part of the events. For a moment, she said nothing, trying to compose herself, until Yoonjung urged her to speak to him, requesting that she intervene. Sujin sighed and agreed to do so, promising she would talk to him. Yoonjung's surprise was evident when her mother formally addressed her as Mom, and she questioned the reason for the unusual title. Sujin simply laughed, brushing it off lightly, allowing a moment of warmth and humor to break the tension. Later, while returning home after grocery shopping, Sujin's thoughts lingered on the morning's events. She reflected on how her daughter had apparently heard everything and felt relieved that he remained unaware of her involvement. She wondered if the noise had been truly loud enough to be heard, realizing she hadn't had a yoga session in quite some time. The memory of the unusual intensity of the previous day made her pause briefly in thought. As she walked along the street, she noticed two girls standing on the side, holding what appeared to be fake protein bars. One warned the other not to take it out of her purse. Sujin froze for a moment, recognizing the resemblance to the item Junhyung had. She mentally made a note to ask him about it next time, curiosity piquing. Suddenly, a girl approached her from behind, politely inviting her to come and take a closer look at the items. Sujin hesitated, politely declining, saying she wasn't interested in such toys. However, the girl insisted, noting that Sujin had been staring and suggested that perhaps she was intrigued. Flustered by the unexpected attention and slightly embarrassed, Sujin gave in and ended up purchasing a single item, a small pink-colored fake protein bar. Once home, she examined it, internally chiding herself for spending money on something so trivial. But she rationalized that since it was already purchased, she might as well try it out. Amused, she began experimenting with the toy, her earlier stress fading momentarily as she allowed herself this small indulgence. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Startled, Sujin went to open it and found Junhyung standing there. He came to pick her to his home. She asked in surprise what had brought him to her door at that exact moment. He apologized and requested her immediate participation in his channel. Sujin questioned whether he meant right now, and he confirmed, pleading for her presence. Though reluctant and clearly annoyed, she agreed to join him, noting her irritation in her expression. Before stepping in, he cautioned her not to be alarmed by anything she might see inside, which prompted her to tease him lightly, remarking that he was scaring her. When they stepped into the house, he handed her a headset mask, requesting that she put it on. She complied quietly, though her thoughts were racing, uncertain about what awaited her inside. They both sat down in front of the computer, and soon the stream went live. He greeted the viewers cheerfully, introducing her to the audience with excitement, while she, somewhat shyly, followed his lead and also offered a greeting. Once the initial pleasantries were over, he explained that they would now be continuing with the stream, then turned his chair toward her with a playful seriousness. He asked if she had ever used the item he was about to show. That was the same protein bar. To her astonishment, he revealed one of those strange toys, the kind she had unexpectedly encountered before. For a moment she was frozen, her mind flashing back to the salesgirl earlier who had tried to show her the exact same kind of product, asking her whether she might want it. The memory collided with the present moment, leaving her stunned. Bluntly, almost without thinking, she muttered the word pinky. He looked at her in surprise, clearly caught off guard by her quick recognition, and she explained that she actually had that particular one. The viewers, watching from behind their screens, flooded the comments section with praise and amusement over her reaction. Junhyun clarified to the audience that his channel often featured these types of toys and that he usually reviewed them. She asked him what he meant by a review, her tone filled with disbelief, and he explained that he tested the products, shared his personal experiences, and then left the item there for the audience to know about. He added that many of his viewers had requested he involve his girlfriend's perspective, which was why he had brought the toy into this stream. He asked her once more if she had ever used something like it before, clarifying that it didn't have to be that specific model. Hesitantly, she admitted that she had, revealing that she had actually been about to try one out when he had come knocking at her door earlier. Mid-sentence, however, she faltered, wondering whether she should reveal the full truth or keep some of it hidden. Finally, she decided to admit it outright, saying he was right. She had used it before. The chat erupted with excitement, the viewers' comments growing increasingly dramatic. She went further, explaining that she had even purchased another version in a different color that very day, though she hadn't yet tried it. As the stream continued, one viewer donated $10, prompting her to thank the donor directly with a smile, her voice carrying both gratitude and embarrassment. Another viewer boldly asked why she had chosen that specific model. Junhyun glanced at her with confusion, his thoughts quietly circling around the idea that perhaps she had used the money he had given her to buy it. She responded honest but awkwardly, saying there was no particular reason, only that its size resembled Junhyun's own, and that was why she had selected it. Her words caused a fresh stir in the chat, and another viewer, calling themselves Master Party, quickly donated $10 more. Junhyun was left speechless by her frankness, while she once again expressed her thanks to the generous viewer. Almost immediately, another bold question appeared in the comment section, asking her whether the toy felt the same in comparison. The question struck a nerve. Her cheeks burned and her patience snapped. In irritation, she raised her voice, saying that she had already explained she was about to use it when he had shown up, and now she hadn't been able to. She added sharply that people should not disturb a woman when she is just about to enjoy her own private happiness. Her outburst caught Junhyun completely off guard. He stared at her, stunned, and asked quietly if she was really admitting that when he had come to get her, she had been preparing to use it. Suddenly flustered, she stumbled over her words, trying to explain herself. She said nervously that after the morning burn session with him the previous day, she had been left with certain lingering feelings. He stopped her mid-sentence, gently telling her to calm down and reminding her that they were live on air and that she didn't need to explain in detail. Startled, she asked in shock if they were actually live at that very moment. He confirmed it, explaining that the audience was watching in real time and that the comments filling the screen reflected exactly what she was saying and doing. Her face flushed deeper with embarrassment as she whispered an apology, realizing the weight of her words. She muttered regretfully that she should not have said any of that, and he agreed, though his tone was soft rather than scolding. Overwhelmed by the situation, she tried to recover, promising that she would explain everything properly to him afterward. But embarrassment overwhelmed her, and in a sudden impulse, she jumped up, excused herself hurriedly, and rushed toward the door. He tried calling after her, asking where she was going, but she only managed a quick farewell, saying she would see him later. He attempted to stop her, but she was too flustered, and before he could act, she had already slipped out of his home, leaving him in surprise and the live stream buzzing with chaotic energy from the audience. As she entered her home and retreated to her room, she lay on her bed, reflecting with regret on her recent actions. She wondered why she had behaved that way and what she had just done, feeling increasingly embarrassed. Staring at the fake protein bar in her hand, she thought to herself that she shouldn't have bought it, worrying that he might think she was strange. Suddenly, Junhyun appeared, opening the door and explaining that he had entered because the front door was unlocked. She asked him why he was there, and he apologized, saying that he should have informed her earlier. He admitted that he had caused trouble again and promised it would be the last time he asked her for a favor, pleading for her forgiveness. She responded that it wasn't his fault, acknowledging that she had overreacted. She expressed her genuine desire to help with his channel. Then, picking up the protein bar, she asked if he could assist her with yoga sessions. Junhyun remarked that she should have attempted the task on her own, causing her to feel embarrassed. Noticing her reaction, he quickly became flustered and clarified that he hadn't meant it that way. She responded that she would try it once, but insisted that he observe her closely to ensure she used the equipment correctly. Neither of them fully understood the situation, but Junhyun agreed with a simple acknowledgement. She then began preparing her yoga mat. After some discussion, they mutually agreed to engage in a resistance band workout session together. The following morning, In-jung sat at the table, savoring her breakfast and noticing her mother's cheerful demeanor. She asked Sujin, who was preparing the meal, whether something pleasant had happened to make her seem so happy. Sujin replied that nothing particular was going on. Yoon-jung inquired if her mother had a boyfriend. Sujin firmly denied it, dismissing the idea. Shortly after, she began checking her phone and saw a message from Junhyun. He had sent her a picture of an outfit, explaining that it was intended for their next streaming session. In the early morning, Dajung stood at the doorway as her husband prepared to leave for work. He mentioned casually that he was heading to the office, and she responded softly, bidding him goodbye. At 40 years old, she lived the life of a typical housewife, though inside she carried far more than the simple routines of domestic life. Her marriage was steady, but she often found herself struggling to communicate with her teenage son, who was entering the difficult stage of puberty. That very morning, her son, dressed neatly in his school uniform, was also ready to leave. He called out a quick farewell to his mother, and though she tried to reply warmly, her voice trembled with nervousness. She wished him a good day, quietly hoping he would sense the sincerity behind her awkward words. As the house quieted, Dajung reflected on her daily life. After finishing her endless list of chores and fulfilling her duties as a wife and mother, another version of herself seemed to awaken, a side that her family knew nothing about. Once the housework was behind her, she sat in front of her computer, switched on her camera, and transformed into Mi Kyung, a glamorous and confident live streamer. She greeted her viewers playfully, asking what they thought of her. The flood of comments filled the screen with admiration and praise, and she basked in the affection of strangers who adored this hidden persona. Her husband and son had no idea that she carried this double life. To them, she was simply Dajong, the modest wife and caring mother. To her audience, however, she was Mi Kyung, the beautiful and vibrant streamer. During one stream, a viewer teasingly asked her about having another child. Laughing playfully, she joked that perhaps she should consider making one more. The chat erupted with laughter, and she even teased further, saying maybe she should find a way to excite her husband again. Yet beneath the laughter, she couldn't ignore a troubling thought. Her viewers had been decreasing lately. Despite her efforts to be entertaining and engaging, some people seemed to lose interest, perhaps because she was married, had a son, and was no longer in her youth. Among the comments, one stood out strangely. Someone remarked that the lady next door has big balloons. Reading it, Dajung frowned and wondered what it meant and who was this lady next door the viewer spoke of. Curiosity tugged at her, and later she came across another video, one made by a young boy who reviewed unusual toys. Something about it caught her attention, and on impulse, she decided she would buy one and started watching that stream. Meanwhile, in another part of the neighborhood, Junhyun and Sujin were preparing to start a stream together. Sujin was dressed in the outfit he had chosen for her, and she adjusted it nervously, confessing that she felt embarrassed. She asked if he was sure she looked all right. He reassured her warmly, telling her not to worry, insisting she looked good. Still doubtful, she asked if she seemed too old to wear such a swimsuit, admitting she had never worn anything like it before. When she asked him about what he meant by getting a weapon, he chuckled lightly, preparing to explain. Elsewhere, Dejung happened to be watching the stream. Her eyes widened in disbelief when she recognized Sujin and thinking that was that really Sujin Kim. She wondered, her mind racing with surprise. On screen, Junhyun continued explaining things to Sujin, guiding her through the stream. When the broadcast finally ended, Junhyun cheerfully said goodbye to the viewers. Sujin, her face glowing with satisfaction, commented happily that they were done for the day. He agreed, congratulating her on a good performance. She asked anxiously if she had made any mistakes, but he reassured her that she had done very well. She admitted shyly that she often felt like she messed things up, but he told her it was his fault whenever things went wrong. Brushing it off, she reminded herself aloud that she was Yoonjung's mother and that she should be heading home soon. He nodded, telling her she could change out of the outfit there while he waited outside. But she hesitated, asking him if he truly thought she didn't look bad in it. His surprised reaction made it clear he genuinely thought the outfit suited her perfectly. She blushed slightly, and he asked curiously what was on her mind. She confessed hesitantly that she had been wondering if their work was finished for the day, reminding him that on the first day they had also done yoga, and on the second day as well. His thoughts flickered with curiosity. Was she expecting something else from him? And did she want to do another morning burn session with him? Wanting to avoid misinterpretation, he suggested they take a short break instead. But before Sujin could respond, her phone rang. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was Dajung. Answering quickly, she spoke in surprise, telling her it had been a while since they last talked, and asking that, what now? She said she can't because she already have something going on, Sujin replied, her tone caught between hesitation and urgency. Sujin went to meet Dajung at a small restaurant. Over coffee, Dajung leaned across the table with her phone in hand, showing Sujin a picture on the screen. She asked teasingly if the woman in the photo was really her, admitting that she had been worried. Dajung remarked that she knew Sujin often felt lonely, but confessed with a mischievous smile that she could not believe Sujin had managed to excite such a young guy. She even admitted that she was a little jealous of her friend. Sujin sat frozen in her seat, utterly shocked and unable to form a proper response. Seeing her silence, Dajung asked lightly if she had passed out from surprise. Then, lowering her voice, she questioned Sujin about the truth of the situation, whether she and Junhyun were really pretending to date, doing it only as a part-time arrangement for the sake of streaming. Embarrassment colored Sujin's cheeks as she admitted quietly, yes, that was the case. Dajung smirked, remarking that they looked good together regardless, and even suggesting that they should actually consider dating for real. Sujin shook her head quickly, insisting it wasn't like that. Gathering courage, she then asked a question of her own, whether Dejung watched streams. She explained that she was curious about how her friend had found her online. The suddenness of the question caught Dejung off guard, though she quickly recovered, saying vaguely that she knew someone who worked in that field. Sujin pressed further, asking who it was because she wanted to meet them. Inside, Dajung panicked. She thought about her secret double life and reassured herself that Sujin wouldn't recognize her. With the wigs, heavy makeup, and completely different appearance, her identity was safely disguised. To maintain the illusion, she showed Sujin a picture on her phone of her alter ego, presenting it as someone else. With a sly grin, she explained that this woman was known as Lady Mi Kyung, someone who often spoke about adult topics. She asked Sujin whether she had ever heard of her. Sujin stared at the photograph, unsure of what to say. She thought that the style of the woman wasn't overly revealing, but seemed bold enough. Outwardly, she admitted she had never heard of her. Dejung breathed an inward sigh of relief, glad that her disguise had worked. She pressed the idea further, asking if Sujin had ever considered a collaboration. Sujin blinked in surprise, not expecting such a proposal, and muttered that the decision could be left to Dajung. Smiling, Dajung said that her friend would be interested. Before leaving, she advised Sujin to ask her boyfriend first before making a choice, then rose from the table with a casual goodbye. Sujin responded politely, and the two women parted ways for their respective homes. That night, Dajung was in her bathroom taking a shower while Sujin sat at home, staring at her phone. Eventually, she called Junhyun and told him everything that had happened at the restaurant, asking what he thought of the situation. Junhyun's response was cheerful. He said it sounded fun. Sujin hesitated, telling him that he didn't need to go along with it if he didn't want to, but he reassured her firmly that he was fine with it. Reluctantly, she agreed to tell Dajung, though privately she thought to herself that she preferred doing streams only with the two of them. Meanwhile, Dajung stepped out of the shower and noticed Sujin finishing her call. She casually asked who Sujin had been speaking to. Sujin turned in surprise, almost startled, as though caught doing something she shouldn't. Seeing her reaction, Dajung teased her, asking if it had been a man. Flustered, Sujin denied it quickly, insisting it was nothing like that, and awkwardly saying she would support Dajung no matter what. Later that night, while the neighborhood was quiet, Dajung sat in front of her computer as Lady Mi Kyung, streaming live. She laughed softly to her viewers, remarking that Junhyun seemed to truly like Sujin, though Sujin herself was too oblivious to notice. She playfully declared that Lady Mi Kyung would become Sujin's Cupid, helping her along while at the same time boosting her own popularity. But as she spoke, her son suddenly walked into the room, rubbing his eyes and saying he was hungry. Quickly, she ended the segment, telling her viewers she would return, and went to the kitchen to make food for him. The next morning, Lady Mi Kyung appeared in person at Sujin and Junhyun's home. With her bright wig, glamorous makeup, and bold energy, she introduced herself confidently, thanking them for letting her use their place. She complimented both of them, calling them handsome and attractive. The moment Sujin looked at her more closely, recognition struck. Beneath the disguise, she realized it was Dajung. She kept the realization inside, her mind reeling in shock. Junhyun, on the other hand, looked at Lady Mi Kyung with admiration, thinking that she was Sujin's friend and very beautiful, though he too kept a straight face, as if he didn't already know. Dajung, now fully in her second personality, outlined her plan, saying she would lead the second half of the collaboration while leaving the first part to them. Junhyun agreed politely, and a laughter filled the room as the three of them began preparing. With a mischievous smile, Dajung declared that let's have some fun today. Dajung was admiring the apartment and complimenting that the place looked so clean and tidy, far different from what she had imagined a man's living space to be. Junhyun responded with gratitude, thanking her politely. Sujin, however, was silently observing the atmosphere, thinking to herself that he seemed unusually shy in front of Dajung. She noticed that the house appeared even more orderly than usual, realizing that he had clearly put in the effort to clean and prepare it before they arrived, probably wanting to leave a good impression. Feeling slightly playful, Sujin reached out and gave him a small pinch, catching him off guard. He immediately turned to her in surprise, asking why she had done that. Sujin, without offering a clear explanation, simply asked him to give her his ear to bring closer to her. When he hesitantly complied, she muttered softly, almost teasing him, calling him an idiot. Her words left him startled and confused, but before he could react further, she began to move ahead with a mix of shyness and determination. Dajung, meanwhile, was watching the two of them closely. She noticed the subtle interactions between them and thought privately that Junhyun seemed to be showing signs of jealousy because of her presence. When the stream began, the viewers flooded the chat with encouragement, urging them to use the toy. Junhyun quickly suggested that such things could be practiced off camera instead, attempting to keep the situation under control. Dajung responded with uncertainty, pretending not to know how to handle it, and soon they began demonstrating the resistance band session using a training dummy. Sujin, seated nearby and wearing a mask, quietly watched them. After that, Dajung announced to the audience that the first part of the stream was finished and that they would return after a short break. Once the camera was off, Junhyun asked Sujin if she was feeling all right, noticing a shift in her expression. She replied that nothing was wrong, though her words betrayed a slight sense of hurt. She even suggested that if he didn't enjoy working with her, then he could simply continue streaming with Dajung, or rather Mi-kyung, instead. Her words left him surprised. At that moment, he began piecing things together, realizing that Sujin's attitude stemmed from jealousy. It became clear to him that despite their collaboration with Dajung being purely professional, Sujin couldn't hide her feelings. He thought about how easily people could get jealous when they truly liked someone. Yet, instead of feeling frustrated, he felt a warmth inside him. He was touched by her emotions and thought to himself that she was a lovely woman. He also knew that he needed to reassure her and clear any misunderstandings before it deepened. He opened his mouth and called Sujin's name, ready to explain himself. But just as he was about to speak, the door swung open. Dejung entered the room, her voice full of excitement. She addressed Sujin, slipping up and calling her Gayung, and presented her with an outfit, cheerfully insisting that this was for the second part of the stream. Turning to Junhyun, she requested that he step outside for a moment so they could change in private. He agreed and walked out, though his mind was unsettled. As he waited, he worried about not getting the chance to talk to Sujin and wondered if everything would turn out fine. Inside, Sujin reluctantly put on the outfit, but it was extremely revealing, leaving her embarrassed and uncertain. She asked timidly if it really looked all right. Dajung brushed off her worries, playfully encouraging her, remarking that her boyfriend would surely find her cute. Sujin, flustered, quickly denied the implication, insisting that it wasn't like that. Dajung smirked and asked if that were truly the case, then teased further by saying that in that case, she could have him for herself. Sujin's mood shifted instantly. She looked at Dajung with visible irritation and asked angrily about her husband. Dajung responded carelessly, claiming that it did not matter. Meanwhile, Junhyun sat outside on a chair, sipping water, wondering why the two were taking so long to change and if things between them were still all right. The second round began, and Dajung directed the focus towards Sujin. She started massaging Sujin's body, carefully applying different techniques, while maintaining a light and playful tone. Sujin, though lying there quietly, could feel the attention and confidence in Dajung's movements, which left her feeling both uncomfortable and tense. Junhyun stood beside them, watching with hesitation, unsure whether to step in or simply observe. At that moment, Dajung turned toward him and suggested that he should concentrate on learning the process rather than just standing idly. He responded in agreement, nodding as if to acknowledge her guidance, and then she reminded him firmly that this moment was meant for learning. He accepted her words once again, trying to compose himself. After continuing for a while, Dajung announced that it was time for a switch. Sujin looked at her in confusion, asking what exactly she meant by that. Dajung explained without hesitation that it was Junhyun's turn to move in and participate, insisting that she should have some fun as well. With that, she lay down on the mat, stretching comfortably, and asked Junhyun to begin massaging her. She added teasingly that since he had been taught already, he should now apply all of those lessons directly on her. To soften the situation, she emphasized that it was nothing more than a massage, so he should not hesitate. Sujin, hearing their exchange, felt her heart sink. She stayed silent for a moment, then reluctantly gave her approval, saying that he could go ahead, though her expression revealed clear embarrassment. Junhyun, noticing her discomfort, still responded obediently, agreeing to start. Slowly, he placed his hands on Dajung's shoulders and began massaging, trying to follow the techniques he had been shown earlier. As the session went on, Sujin's emotions grew heavier. She began to feel frustrated, her mind filling with restless thoughts. It seemed to her that Dajung was enjoying herself far too much, smiling and relaxing in a way that made Sujin uneasy. She recalled vividly how Dajung had asked earlier whether she could have him for herself. That memory stung, and she began to feel as though the entire situation was intentionally designed to provoke her. Sujin decided to join both of them in the morning burn session, even though she felt it might carry a certain risk. Deep inside, she thought it could stir unnecessary tension, yet she convinced herself that she had no other choice and that she needed to participate regardless of the consequences. Later, Dajung stood outside the house feeling deeply embarrassed, her face flushed with the weight of humiliation. She was about to leave and return to her own home, her mind clouded with the thought that she only wished no one would see her in such a compromising situation. The shame of being thrown out lingered heavily, and she kept replaying the scene in her head, wishing she could erase it. Yet, just as she was about to turn away, her ears caught a faint sound. It was Sujin's voice coming from inside Junhyun's house. The realization struck her suddenly, and she understood with certainty that both of them were inside together, engaged in the late-night wrestling session that she had been excluded from. A wave of mixed emotions rushed through her, jealousy and helplessness. She decided not to leave immediately, but instead lingered there, quietly listening to the faint voices from within. Curiosity bound her to the spot, though her pride told her to walk away. While she was caught in this conflict, an older lady happened to approach. The woman glanced at Dajung with disapproval, her expression sharp and judgmental. In a stern tone, she remarked that as a grown woman, Dajung should compose herself and put her clothes on properly. The words hit Dajung like a sting, amplifying the embarrassment she already felt. Flustered, she responded quickly, agreeing, quiet, her voice betraying her shame. The older lady, however, did not stop there. As she walked away, she muttered in irritation, saying that the younger generation these days had gone insane with their ways. The sting of humiliation mixed with jealousy as her thoughts shifted once more towards Sujin, who, at that very moment, was inside with Junhyun, doing the yoga session that Dajung had been denied. Time passed more quickly than Sujin realized. Every time she appeared on Junhyun's show, he paid her without hesitation, and this brought noticeable relief to her financial situation. The small but consistent support from him slowly stabilized her life, and she felt gratitude, even if she never expressed it in words. At the same time, her daughter Injung eventually moved out of the house, thanking her mother before leaving. That farewell, though ordinary on the surface, carried an emotional weight for Sujin. The empty home suddenly felt quieter, yet it also gave her moments to reflect on herself. With Yoonjung gone, she found herself beginning to enjoy personal moments of freedom, though she hesitated to call it leisure, as it was more about adjusting to a new rhythm of life than indulging in luxuries. One afternoon, while she was busy at home, Junhyun arrived unexpectedly at her door. She welcomed him warmly inside. As he entered, he thanked her and showed her something he had brought along, explaining with a smile that this was for today's use. Curious, she asked what it was, and he revealed it to be a helmet, something she had never seen before. That small gesture reminded her how her days had grown busier ever since he started visiting. Her life, once steady and predictable, now kept moving with a faster pace. After Injung's departure, Junhyun would often come over under the pretext of reviewing odd items or weird toys, but those visits always turned into shared cardio sessions. After one of their workouts, she mentioned casually that there was only ramen left at home. He responded lightly, offering to bring out some vegetables to make it better. She accepted with a soft thanks. When they sat down at the table, however, his tone turned more serious. He said he wanted to discuss something with her. She asked what it was, and he explained that there was going to be a gathering of streamers. She was surprised by this, not having expected such an event. He continued, telling her that Mi Kyung, the woman he had previously collaborated with, had extended the invitation. This startled Sujin even more, for she remembered Dajung as well and wondered why she had not been told directly. Questions filled her mind, yet she held back and only asked if she was expected to go with him. Junhyun replied that he wanted her to accompany him, but there was more. Technically, the two of them were dating, and he wanted to introduce her as his girlfriend. Hearing this left Sujin both nervous and touched. She admitted that he was right and agreed to go with him, though she tried to redirect the conversation by pointing out that the food was growing cold. He accepted with a simple nod, but before resuming the meal, she asked when the gathering was scheduled. He informed her that it would take place on the upcoming weekend. That night, as she stood under the shower, Sujin's thoughts lingered on the matter. The water fell over her as she reflected on the situation with a mixture of excitement and dread. Deep inside, she confessed to herself that she was afraid. The age gap weighed heavily on her mind. She was old enough to be his aunt, and she knew that people would surely whisper behind her back. Yet, despite the fear of judgment, another feeling grew stronger, the desire to stand proudly beside him. She longed to show others that he was her boyfriend, even if the world questioned it. Sujin spent the evening carefully getting dressed, standing in front of the mirror with a mix of uncertainty and determination. Tonight, she would be appearing as Junhyun's girlfriend, and in that role, she needed to present herself with confidence. With that thought, she accepted her choice of attire, even if it made her slightly nervous. When Junhyun arrived at her door to pick her up, he looked strikingly handsome in his well-chosen clothes. His neat appearance made her feel both reassured and shy at the same time. He cheerfully told her that it was time to go, and though she replied with a simple agreement, there was a hint of embarrassment in her expression. Quietly, she wished that he would feel proud to walk beside her. Her wish was answered when he praised her appearance, remarking that her outfit was especially pretty that evening. That small compliment filled her with gratitude and gave her a quiet confidence. She thought to herself that when he introduced her as his girlfriend later, it would be a true pleasure. Together they left, and on their way, they encountered Dejung, who waved and called out for them to come over. Sujin greeted her warmly, saying how happy she was to see her. Dejung, however, suddenly realized she had forgotten her wig at home and muttered that she had been caught. Sujin noticed the comment but brushed it aside as Dejung quickly recovered and urged everyone to head inside. Junhyun was puzzled by her words but decided not to dwell on it. They entered the beautiful hotel with Sujin marveling quietly at the elegant surroundings. She and Dajung chatted casually, and Junhyun observed their interaction with a flicker of curiosity, wondering if they had known each other more closely before. As they walked further, Sujin admitted to herself that the place felt too young and trendy for her taste. Dajung teased her for sounding like a grandmother. Yu then guided them to the private room where the gathering was being held. Inside, the room was filled with young streamers, chatting and laughing. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. One of them noticed Sujin immediately and asked why she was not wearing a mask, welcoming her warmly. Dajung encouraged them to step inside, and soon everyone gathered comfortably. Sujin sat down, feeling slightly overwhelmed. It was her first time attending such an event, and she realized that apart from Dajung, everyone else seemed so much younger. That made her wonder if she stood out awkwardly, especially when she noticed a man staring at her from across the room. The attention left her uneasy, but she tried to remain composed. Once everyone was settled, Dajung suggested introductions. She began with herself, revealing her real name as Mi Kyung-an, explaining that she streamed different types of content, often focused on grown-up conversations. Then Kangsu, the man who had been staring, introduced himself as a streamer who made anime figures. Another boy followed, introducing himself as Taeyang Gum, and proudly announced that the three girls beside him were his girlfriends. This shocked the group, and someone questioned what he meant, but he laughed it off, saying the three of them shared all sorts of fun together. When it came to Junhyun's turn, he began to introduce himself by explaining that he reviewed yoga tools on his stream, and he gestured towards Sujin. But before he could continue, she stopped him gently, insisting on introducing herself. She told the group her name was Ga Young-an, and without hesitation declared herself to be his girlfriend. The words came out clear and confident, surprising even herself. Immediately, Taeyang complimented her, calling her beautiful and encouraging her to show her face on stream since her skin was flawless and her balloons are so large. Sujin, though shy, could only laugh softly. Kangsu added that he was her biggest fan and that he always watched her streams. She thanked him sincerely and, in that moment, felt a wave of relief. Perhaps they did not see her as a strange older woman after all. The group raised their glasses as Dajung suggested a toast, remarking how rare it was for all the streamers to gather in one place. The drinks clinked and the mood grew even more cheerful. Later, Dajung asked Kangsu if he read webtoons, to which he replied with genuine surprise that he did not even know what those were. The group laughed, and the conversation continued easily. Sujin enjoyed herself deeply that night. It turned out to be far more fun than she had expected. As the evening wound down, Taeyang suggested a group yoga session sometime, promising it would be fun. Kang-soo approached Sujin again, saying he would be rooting for her, to which she thanked him politely. He left after wishing her happiness, though Junhyun silently observed that his gaze had lingered too long on Sujin's balloons. When the gathering finally ended, Dejung announced that she would be heading home and asked what the two of them planned to do. Sujin replied that they would also return home, but Dajung encouraged them to go somewhere nice and perhaps continue their cardio session together.